Trump campaign and Donald Trump's Republican allies have filed at least 57 lawsuits to try to challenge the election result. And no court has found a single instance of fraud, including that Texas suit, which have been immediately struck down by the United States Supreme Court. The lawyer fighting for the Biden campaign and the Democratic Party, and it would appear democracy itself, throughout much of these efforts, Mark Alize writes today, quote, "One might think that the simple end of this problem is for Donald Trump to simply leave the White House on the morning of January 20th as a disgraced one-term president. The Republican Party's reaction to the Texas case suggests this will not be the case. The broad support among Republicans for the previously unthinkable, a demand that the judiciary deliver Trump the presidency against the overwhelming will of the American people, signals a worrying and serious erosion of our democratic values within the Republican Party." Joining our conversation, the author of that, Democratic voting rights attorney and founder of the Democracy Docket, Mark Alize. Thank you so much for spending some time with us. I search your Twitter feed for the count every day of how many lawsuits the Trump campaign lost. And just first, congratulations on the legal victories, but what was it like to fight against cases that were not rooted in fact?
So thank you for having me. To set the record, Trump and his allies have now lost 59 lawsuits.
I'm sorry.
That's all right. I thought they wouldn't make it till 60, but they actually then filed a lawsuit in New Mexico after the vote certification. So I suspect that'll be their 60th loss. But it's been a surreal experience because, this election was close, but it wasn't that close, right? I mean, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris won 7 million more votes and over 300 electoral votes. And even when you look at the states at the margins, they weren't that close. I mean, we weren't talking about elections in any of these states decided by hundreds or even a few thousand votes. We're talking about elections that were decided by tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of votes. And so, the lawsuits that were filed one after another, were just, surreal. They were not grounded in fact, but they also weren't grounded in law. They were just kind of helter-skelter efforts to try to undo what was the clear outcome of the election.
Do you have any doubt that the political strategy that Trump and his campaign landed on heading into the election was to get close enough to try to sue their way or muddle their way or cheat their way to victory?
So I think that's one of the great unanswered questions that I have is, was this always their strategy? Because honestly, it wasn't a very good strategy. And for all of the preparation that we heard the Republican Party was engaged in, remember we heard about 50,000 poll watchers and armies of lawyers, and they had hired the best of the best. And in the end, what we got was sort of Cindy Powell and the Kraken. Like, I'm not sure if this was actually the strategy they planned.
Do you see what Chris Krebs talks about, what Gabriel Sterling, these are lifelong Republicans, Gabriel Sterling, an election official in Georgia, Chris Krebs, the fired former head of cybersecurity at Donald Trump's Homeland Security Department, they talk about sort of a new divide in the Republican Party where so many, these 126 House members come to mind, stand with Trump on the side of the delusion, the lie, the really dangerous lie that has led to angry mobs, armed mobs outside the homes of election officials and secretaries of state. And then on the other side, these very few Republicans, it's sad for me to say that, but there are very few of them standing on the side of the truth and standing on the side of democracy. To me, I don't see any way for those two to ever knit up again. What do you see from sort of the other side of them in the courtroom?
Yeah, I agree with you, and that's why I wrote the piece that I did, because, it's one thing for Rudy Giuliani to, spout a bunch of nonsense in a parking lot in Pennsylvania, and it's another thing for them to, spout some of that nonsense in courtrooms and get thrown out. But what really struck me was not that Texas sought the relief it did. I chalked that up when I first saw it to the fact that, Attorney General Paxton may have had his own legal problems that he's trying to curry favor with Donald Trump. pardon. But then to watch 17 other state attorneys general sign on to that. I mean, none of those other 17 states attorney generals had to do that. And then to watch 126, a majority of the House Republicans sign on to that, to literally throwing out the election results for 4 states, tens of millions of voters, is such a deeply, deeply troubling anti-democratic effort that it really led me to think, wow, we have a divide in this country that is much, much more pernicious and deeper than I ever thought possible, which is a divide over whether or not we all are committed to the idea of free and fair elections. And that's really troubling. And restoring that is really... I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to bring it to your op-ed today, which broadens this out to the assault on one of these central tenets of democracy. And I wonder if it seems to me that the judiciary is the only branch that hasn't been corrupted by Donald Trump. And I wonder what you think the first step is to sort of reinforming people or reinvigorating people's enthusiasm for democracy as another method for articulating the dangers of anyone doing this after an election that they lost.
Yeah, look, I mean, it's good that the judiciary held, and it held across the board. It held among Democratic and Republican appointees. It held among elected judges and appointed judges, state judges and federal judges. But ultimately, our democracy can't rely on judges resisting the impulses of autocratic politicians, where they're going to be supported by such a wide base of their political party. Because the next time we may not have a circumstance of a blowout election. The next time we may not have a circumstance where it's Nancy Pelosi, not Kevin McCarthy, who's going to wield the gavel in the Congress. The next time we may not have a Senate that may be 50-50. We could have a circumstance that is much, much more problematic. And I really didn't worry about this before the election because it never occurred to me that you would see elected Republicans looking to throw out the votes of Americans, and in some instances looking to throw out their own elections. I mean, you had members of the Republican caucus in Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Georgia looking to toss their own election results.
Mm-hmm. That's truly remarkable. Mark Alize, thank you so much. We wanted to talk to you for a long time. Thank you for spending some time with us today. Thank your dog for jumping in and joining you for the interview. It was great to watch your dog. He came right over your shoulder and jumped on the couch when we started talking. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Nicole.
Thank you very much.